Hello, Ivy here. Today's podcast is on stages of jealousy and envy in the UK Royal Group of Clowns. This week's podcast explores the psychological stages of jealousy and envy and the physical evidence of it being in play. The source group for this brief outline of activity in the UK Monarchy and its associates in government and media and their supporters. The topic of study is vast, and the subjects for the purposes of this podcast are rich in evidence. We have 5 years and counting of research material which will keep psychologists and many sections of the healthcare professions occupied for whole careers. Jealousy involves fear with thoughts of a potential loss. Commonly, jealousy is an emotional reaction activated by the actual or anticipated interest in another person by someone we care about. When a third party threatens a bond that exists in a partnership, we may feel insecure, rejected, worried, angry, or self-doubting among a host of other undesirable feelings. The emotion of jealousy is a derivative of shame. It is seen as an obstacle to the connection between ourselves and a loved one. When you experience jealousy, you assume that someone else is receiving the attention or adoration that you want for yourself in some way. One of the typical coping responses can involve withdrawal, avoidance, or attacking the other person. The latter of which can result in aggressive and offensive behaviour. The person or people feeling jealous may wish to hurt the person or people who are considered the rival, and behave in ways that will control the person whose bond you fear you are losing. Such behaviour is done with the aim of breaking up the connection with the third parties or re-establishing the primary relationship. Any of these activities bring any of the groups to mind. For example, some members of the royal family, media, the tabloid press in particular, the so-called experts who form the Carnival of Clowns, and royalist supporters who live and breathe involvement in hateful activity against anyone who is seen as changing the current status quo. Avoidance behavior is where individuals resort to seeking comfort in the use of substances or behaviours that are carried out away from public view. Who knows how many of the identified groups in these podcasts resort to such activity? But one thing is for sure, their public-facing behaviour, and equally the keyboard warriors who imbibe and then forward on their irrational hatred via electronic means to anyone associated with the individuals, in this case the Sussexes, but particularly Meghan, including all charitable organisations associated with them, are all projecting their venom, which ultimately will cause harm to themselves, regardless of whether or not the intended victim is aware of their venom. I am sure, for the most part, and after 5 years of such attacks, Harry and Meghan moved away to protect their mental health and have created boundaries, which the perpetrators do not seem able to have the moral fibre to do, to ensure that they are shielded from such toxic activity most of the time. Another side effect for the ones who feel left behind is to fall into depression or loneliness. If there is not enough psychological safety in that relationship, or if you have experienced childhood loss or abandonment, that interferes with your sense of safety and may have a hard time working through an experience of shame-based jealousy. Since jealousy involves comparison, the person who experiences the emotion is left thinking that they do not measure up. Jealousy is interchangeable with envy. While jealousy can be described as a fear that another person may take something that you regard as yours, envy is a desire for something that belongs to someone else. Both jealousy and envy can cause feelings of insecurity. Envy is more likely to cause feelings of sadness, whereas jealousy is more likely to provoke anger and resentment. The two emotions can and do often occur together. I'll briefly touch on in the podcast, but there is more detail in the article about how moods can affect our health. Laughing is good for your heart, but anger sends your blood pressure soaring. We are probably all hardwired for jealousy. Even babies and dogs feel it. Not to be confused with envy, which is about coveting what someone else has. For example, a fabulous house with numerous bathrooms, etc. Jealousy is about protecting what is yours, or what you think is yours. Scientists suspect the brain's left frontal cortex, which deals in emotions like shame, is involved in some way. Another key factor is our dopamine system. It regulates the chemical associated with happiness or reward. There are 3 types of jealousy: reactive jealousy, suspicious jealousy, and delusional jealousy, which usually occurs when the previous 2 have become obsessional. Jealousy in these circumstances can kickstart the body's stress response. It was traditionally thought that most complex aspects of human emotions are driven by culture. For example, the English thought to be straight-laced, whereas the Italians and Indians are effusive. Or at least this was quoted in a particular research paper that I read. And I have got that in references at the end for those who wish to know where it came from. Over the last 2 decades, this perspective has changed, with growing realisation that there is a basic scaffolding specified by genes. This was a long research paper, and even the abstract that I read was quite long in duration, but it was fascinating. For the purpose of this podcast and the people we are looking at, I felt that this section summed it up quite nicely, though I do believe that the study has many interesting points relating to human behaviour and the workings within the body that go along with the behaviour. The following section made me smile, and I immediately thought of the Royal Rota and the comments that many have openly made in interviews without any shame about their words. I also found the content and the toxic elements of it found within various TV panel shows, which have bolstered their viewing figures based on the popularity of hate and the general public paranoia feeding from the food store of tabloid publications. In the UK, many things are sliding down into the trash can of life. But one thing is for sure: the business model for media, which the UK British royal family rely on, is definitely one that hungers for hatred and toxic reporting about the Sussexes, and blame every ill in life upon this couple, regardless of what is going on in the world, or even going as far as telling lies to protect members of that same family, but not prepared to tell the truth about Harry and Meghan, in order to reduce the risk to their actual lives and that of their children, caused by the British royal family itself and its contract with the media. One section in this study caught my attention for the purposes of today's podcast. This part of one of the studies that was carried out in the research paper relates to the emotion of envy. And these were the questions, some of the questions around it. Are you more envious of A, someone who is similar to you in most respects, but is a bit wealthier, say 50% wealthier? Or B, more envious of someone like Bill Gates? Is a beggar jealous of a slightly more successful beggar, or of Bill Gates? The answer is almost always the former. 10 out of 11 people surveyed chose A. This does not make sense. One usually expects the strength of an emotion to be directly proportional to the resource being sought after. For example, blood glucose determines the degree of hunger. Following this argument, shouldn't you be more envious of Bill Gates? Common sense might dictate that the better off someone is than you are, the more envious you should be. But this is not necessarily true. One would imagine, logically, to be more jealous of Bill Gates because he has more resources. But the emotion module is wired up for gut reactions, like jealousy, sometimes overriding logical inferences. What then is the evolutionary logic of such results? What is it that drives envy? Is the fact that you envy your neighbour than you do Bill Gates? The answer is that the whole purpose of envy is to motivate you into action, either by independently trying harder, envy, or by coveting and stealing what the other has, jealousy. This is why jealousy has an aggressive component, but envy is more positive, sometimes even being tinged with admiration. Using the Bill Gates versus the more prosperous beggar, it was explained in the following way in this research paper. Envy evolved to motivate access to resources that are in demand by others in your group. If I am the poor beggar, my brain quickly computes that in all likelihood, the very rich Bill Gates is either deservedly much richer, i.e. he is far smarter, or just extremely lucky. Evolutionary speaking, there is no point in being jealous of him because he is off the scale, either in ability or luck, so no amount of effort by an individual ordinary member of the public can result in reaching his level of prosperity. Envy would motivate an inappropriate and futile waste of resources. The richer beggar, on the other hand, may be only slightly smarter, luckier, or more hard-working than me, so there is some chance, at least. Envy might motivate me to succeed his access to resources, or jealousy may motivate me to steal it away from him with impunity. There are many more interesting analogies between the fortunes of a beggar and Bill Gates, and how they are viewed by people in the study, in relation to jealousy and envy. I took from this the following, and I caveat this by the fact that I have not spent weeks going through this and much more on this area of study, but for the purpose of this podcast and my general interest in Sussexes and a vehement dislike of their treatment in the UK by a variety of groups, I have come to the following conclusions, in no particular order, just as they come to me as I was typing up the summary research. The hatred and toxic emotions on display towards Meghan from the start in 2016 was resentment of someone outside of the aristocracy gene pool entering into a relationship with the UK's favourite prince, and it becoming so serious so quickly, which went against what one so-called expert from the Carnival of Clowns clan described as the union being suitable for a fling, but not for marriage, and it would soon be over, or words to that effect. And by the way, I have spelt clan when I say Carnival of Clowns clan with 3 Ks for a reason. In other words, someone outside of the accepted gene pool is fine to be a fling, but definitely not for marriage. The fact that Meghan was a millionaire several times over just did not compute in the minds of the racists, and there were plenty of them coming out of the woodwork in a variety of ways. The acting profession was deemed to be unsuitable grounding for someone to enter and marry into the royal family, but the decades of the royal family being involved with the industry of sex trafficking and or sexual activity of children was and still is deemed perfectly all right. A member of the royal family had one of its members high in the line of succession as patron of BAFTA, a professional body representing the very profession that this same family considered beneath them. And by definition, all who earned a living in that profession were viewed in the same way. Currently, at least one member of the British royal family is wanted for questioning by the FBI for perfectly credible reasons. But currently, all the wagons have circled whichever castle they reside in at any given time, and the media have been ordered not to discuss it in their publications. The general public, who pay for all the funding for this family, whatever the official line given, do not appear to have a problem with this approach. If we take the Bill Gates research analogy, it seems that this family are just so rich and powerful, there is no merit in spending time feeling jealous or envious about how they acquired such wealth, or whether or not their activities are questionable. The UK public seem to be all right with this, well, some of them anyway, and the fact that the institution is supported by the government in the UK and the media is only publishing distraction stories for the last 5 years and using Harry and Meghan as income clickbait, whilst turning a blind eye to anything else going on in the plantation behind gilded gates. Seems the general public think that the whole cartel at the top of the societal structure is just too large and powerful to spend time worrying about. The aristocracy will quietly support it as well, because they benefit from the current system. And one small element of that is females within that group are quite happy to be mistresses or to actually marry someone for the wealth that comes with it, etc., etc. That is a lifetime aspiration among that crowd. And the UK just laps it all up and admires the wealth on display and only have an issue when someone from a lower class enters the fray. If that person is already affluent without relying on a rich spouse, then that causes hackles to rise. And if the person is a woman of colour, people just lose their damn minds. In the first part of this article, I said the following. Behave in ways that will control the person whose bond you fear losing. Such behaviour is done with the aim of breaking up the connection with the third parties or re-establishing the primary relationship. I regard the British royal family who were feeling jealous about Harry and Meghan escaping their clutches and went out of their way for 4 years out of 5 to break the connection between this couple with the hope that Harry would return and re-establish the primary relationship. The inbuilt arrogance that all slaves to the regime would always consider the relationship with the plantation to be and should be their primary relationship. It is always disguised as duty, but anyone born into a group which deliberately created you like a laboratory specimen to serve the cult and tell you from the start that you are there to serve and be a support system to the older sibling and that you do not have independent thought or the freedom to be seen better than the older sibling, etc. That is not duty. That is bondage. Modern-day slavery set in an opulent setting is still slavery if you cannot leave. And if you manage to escape, you are hunted down like prey, like a slave gone bad. That is not a primary relationship. It is not family. A phrase from the podcast last week comes to mind. Trying to convince whole nations that you are helping them by dropping humanitarian bombs on them. Think of that, how they treat people who try to leave the royal family and tell you it's for your own good. I'll leave that one there. I think it sums it up nicely. The next section I discussed included the following phrase. Avoidance behavior is where individuals resort to seeking comfort in the use of substances or behaviours that are carried out away from public view. The evil thought processes of certain people classed as senior royals are beginning to show the physical outward signs of obvious inner turmoil, and it is something that publicly no one seemed prepared to say. But from a UK resident perspective, I see it as dangerous and high risk for any country to have any of these individuals representing the UK in any setting. This love of power and status based on genealogy and which birth canal they emerge from is archaic and no longer fit for purpose. Add to that, the only credible person with skills and empathy with people was forced out of the family and the UK because of jealousy and racism. And now that the void is so obviously growing in negative outcomes day by day, it's pretty obvious that there has been yet another huge mistake made, but because of pride and the public face that they feel that they are getting away with, no one is admitting that the monarchy is finished. It is when, not if. The press now are resorting to discussing the merits of a child who is not even a decade old as being the next hope. No mention of what will happen in the intervening decades with the existing dollar store royals we have now. They may have hidden money in various bank accounts, and currently the UK taxpayer has never been given the opportunity to vote on the existence of the monarchy, but it will come. In the meantime, the hope is by some that the UK will stumble through this ineffective and non-value-adding institution until their saviour of a currently very young child becomes an adult. I already feel sympathy for the said child, and I yet again ask the question, what is the purpose of reasoning used to keep and continue funding people who most people are already saying are not popular or competent, and costing the country whilst they all navel-gaze? The vast majority of articles published by the British royal family's own propaganda team is about the Sussexes. The Sussex name in a headline guarantees engagement and therefore money. If the established royal family cannot do this, then why are they there? Psychologists claim that there are only 5 types of jealousy that actually exist, and they can be classified according to colours, from white to purple. White jealousy, and I say here I have an aversion to colour coding, particularly where white is seen only in positive terms. But, using their analogy, I will carry on. This type of jealousy is the healthiest for your relationship. White jealousy is a method to guard your territory, and it comes from a sincere care and commitment to a relationship. Blue jealousy is a type of jealousy when a person cannot control their negative emotions and they become sad and anxious. Green jealousy is when insecure people become paranoid, seeking solace in alcohol or even drugs. Red jealousy is aggressive and uncontrollable. Purple jealousy is the most dangerous condition. A person may behave absolutely normal by hiding their jealousy. As a rule, a person completely builds a parallel reality where they are trying to punish the focus of their jealousy. I found in the research undertaken this week regarding stages of jealousy or envy, I found it to be more about types rather than stages. People may experience more than one type of various stages in life experiences with someone or a life event, but there is not a cycle of progression as such. It is more about recognising the type of behaviour being exhibited by someone or a group, and then deciding on the appropriate responses accordingly. I will end this podcast with a few quotes relating to jealousy and envy, mainly anonymous quotes, but I found one from Oprah Winfrey which I felt very appropriate, and that is the last one that I quote. The circus has been in town for 5 years now, with the British royal family at the centre being the ringmaster. directing the activities and the timescale for each act to come out and perform, according to the rehearsals which occurred beforehand. Everyone knows their script, and when it is their time to come out and provide distraction from everyday disturbing events. Just like the big top, the plantation setting is disguised as a fun place to be, with much to smile over, and all the while averting the gaze of the audience on things which really will impact on their day-to-day lives, and not in a good way. Every day, the general public are attracted to what is going on in the main ring that day, and see which acts are out in force, entertaining the masses, with a fake positive spin. In between each act, the carnival of clowns appear, dancing around, trying to outdo each other in the relevance department, so that they will be invited back to perform again. All the clowns on show pretend to be expert, but in reality they too are spinning a fictional tale. But it is all dressed up in bright, lovely, eye-catching colours. All speak as if they have royal blue blood in them, because yet they have convinced themselves of that aspect, as they have become so immersed in the folklore they tell in exchange for income, that they have come to believe aspects of the lies themselves. The reality is they were hired as flunkies for the British royal family and were considered no more than loyal mouthpieces now that they have left the main employ. We know that the people of colour employed in those sacred corridors are there to do menial tasks, no matter their ability, as one senior royal has admitted earlier this week. So, the carnival of clowns have been led to believe that they are better than, because of their skin colour, and they have become clone-like in their manner of speech. But in reality, they are no more than service personnel who are given the equivalent of a golden toilet brush to use as they clean up royal mess as one type or another. This group in particular are definitely full of envy, as they see the Sussexes making a life of a level that they themselves never dreamed of, and were hoping, like all the royalists, that life would be made so difficult for Harry and Meghan by all those performing in the big top circus every day that Sussexes would return to the plantation begging for forgiveness. All the power that all of these groups perceived they had was all an illusion. Their biggest mistake was assuming that they had control over people, and in particular Harry and Meghan and their family. They assumed that living in the royal bubble was more attractive than having autonomy over one's own life. They assumed that Sussex would ignore how they had been treated before, and since leaving the UK, taxpayers' purse strings, and the slave mentality of the British royal family, and run back to them each time they needed someone to attract the international press. By that, I am referring to all of these groups, all of these hate groups that chased Harry and Meghan out, are now in between writing hateful articles, inciting racist hate. In between all of that, they then throw out these little cherries that they think are mistaken for cherries and keep inviting them back. And it's not because they like them, it's not because they want them there, other than they want someone that will attract the international press. Then they will make as much as they can from those odd days, those pearls that the Sussexes give them when they come to the UK. And in between that, they will continue with their venom. And as they're beginning to realise now, slowly, that game is not going to work. And I really don't think that Harry and Meghan will be spending much time, if any, in the UK. On the odd occasion, maybe for an important event, Harry will come. I have even less doubt about Meghan, and if she does, it probably once a year, if that. They've been treated terribly, and I see absolutely no reason why they should come and help all the people that actually made their lives so difficult and we nearly lost Meghan and her unborn baby at the time because of their behaviour, I really don't see that they owe the UK anything at all. But that's just my personal opinion. It is patently obvious that no one outside of the UK, or very few people, and none of influence, is interested in what the British royal family do from day to day. And even their own media do not write even 1% of their daily output on the people who they are meant to be putting at a pedestal and convincing the world of their greatness. Instead, they are chasing coins by printing and generating and inciting hatred against a couple who have chosen to leave and be self-financing. Only in the UK could this be seen as a dereliction of duty. One of the quotes I use at the end of this podcast asks the question, which person would want to be friends with those who tried to cause the end of their life? None. Harry and Meghan continue, as you are doing. The crabs in a bucket on the plantation and their helpers are all doing enough to destroy themselves. All Sussex squad are with you in mind and spirit in the USA. None of us have any interest in what the British royal family and their supporters are doing. We believe karma will find all it needs to reach in due course. Meanwhile, we are all in Montecito. Cheers to a job well done, everyone, particularly Harry and Meghan. Cheers. First quote of 3. Don't worry about what I'm doing. Worry about why you're worried about what I'm doing. Second quote. Some people only hate you because of the way other people love you. Final quote. You can't be friends with someone who wants your life. And that was from Oprah. That's the end of today's podcast. Hope you find that useful. I hope that you find the article illuminating and the list of references at the end, if you wish to explore any of those again, I hope you find those interesting too. That's it for another week. Bye from Ivy. Bye.